I'm Mike.
I'm Taylor. Two friends and a question.
All right, Taylor, I got one for you.
Okay.
It's a really easy question. You'll probably be able to answer it right off the cuff. And then
I'm sure.
We'll move on.
Yes,
Ready?
I'm all-knowing.
The all-knowing Taylor. What's wrong with the world?
What's wrong with the world?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll let you answer it first.
That's not what we did in rehearsal.
I know, but that's okay.
Can I put it in one word?
Absolutely.
Selfishness.
I think that's perfect. I really do. Selfishness on thinking of ourselves and not others.
Yeah.
Or thinking about ourselves and not our children.
Right.
Our grandchildren.
Right.
Our great-grandchildren. And
Right.
the legacy that we're going to leave.
Right. Selfishness in that I don't need God and his forgiveness. I don't need Christ's sacrifice for me. I can do it on my own.
Or I don't want it.
Or I don't want it. Right. I think that's...
Not that I don't need it. I don't want it. I don't want what that is.
Right. Right. Shutting out that love. All right, I got a quote for you. Society is perishing because it has refused to hear the word of God.
And I believe that so much. And I think any possible situation in life, any circumstance that we're dealing with, there's scripture in the Bible that will help us. Yeah. But God is the last person we turn to.
Right.
And I started, years ago when I was going through my divorce, I would call everybody, wanting them to make everything right. And sometimes we do that. We turn to other people when God is the last source that we turn to, when he should be the first source.
You know what I've often said to myself? I think I'm making God plan Z. And that's not where he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be plan A with no plan B in a way.
Right. And before you go and talk to anyone, have you asked God? Have you talked to God about it?
Right. Let me ask you one more corollary question. What can you do about it? If there is something wrong with the world, what can you do about it?
I think in your own little corner of the world, that you've got to be the light in the dark world, that you've got to show love. You've got to be Christ-like. You constantly have to say, what would Jesus do in this circumstance?
Right.
What would he do? What would he want me to do?
Right.
What would he ask me to do?
Mm-hmm.
And if you really live by that, Mike, the only answer is always love.
Yep.
Every
time.
He never says hate or punish
think about it.
or...
Right. Or call a committee and have them do it.
Right.
Or pass a law.
Yeah.
He said love. Let me ask this question. If love is the answer to everything, like you just said, and we all know that to some degree, what's wrong with the world? Why is it not? I mean, we know, right?
Because I think there's just so much evil in it.
And
I think sometimes it's hard for us to be good when evil happens to us.
Hard for us to be good when evil has happened to us.
To keep doing good. God says, keep doing good. Keep doing good. And when things are happening around us or to us, sometimes it's hard to remember to keep doing good or keep being good or keep loving and forgiving. And sometimes I know even in my own life, I feel like I've had enough. When am I going to reap the harvest? When am I going to go through my life and not have hard times when I see people that don't even believe in you, God, living a life that is amazing, happy, prosperous, no struggles?
You know what I call that? The older son syndrome. Remember the prodigal son?
Yes,
and the
absolutely.
older son's like, hey, where's mine?
Right. And that is very hard sometimes for me to not have that.
And I know you, and you are such a good person that you probably have had this feeling, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. And it feels like, you know what? So where's mine? And I think God is like the father in the parable. It's coming, but I've asked you to be patient and to work with me.
And you know what, Mike? This is what I truly believe. And I don't know if this is my own human voice hearing this or if it's God's voice. But I really believe in the past, couple of years of my life and the way that I've tried to live, okay? Mm-hmm. I don't go out. I don't party. I don't go out and get drunk. I don't go out and seek pleasure. Can I just say it that way?
Mm-hmm.
In physical forms.
Mm-hmm.
I abstain. I just try to focus on being a mom. And I really feel like there was one time that God said to me, you might not see it in this world, but you're going to see it in the next.
Your bounty.
Yeah. And in my home, there are many mansions.
Yes, 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 yes.
And who's to say that people that you're looking at on earth today that are living in those mansions and don't know me are going to be looking at you in heaven one day saying, why am I not in that place?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know biblically about that, so somebody's probably going to fight me on this,
Mm-hmm.
but these are the ways that I think. And I think I've got to keep doing good. God's put this in my heart. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to go meet man after men after person. I'm not going to be the Taylor I was when I was 25 years old, seeking happiness and fulfillment and to be full in the physical world. I'm going to seek fulfillment in the spiritual realm, as hard as that is sometimes.
Yeah. You know, Mother Teresa once said, God doesn't call us to be successful. He calls us to be faithful.
Yes. But Mike, with all that being said, what do you think that you can do or we can do as a society to make the world a better place?
I'm going to hit up Mother Teresa one more time.
Okay.
They asked her the very same question. Some reporters asked her, look, we in the West, not 300 million of us are not going to come to India and missionize.
Right.
It's not going to work. What can we do? And she said, smile more. Start by smiling more.
Mm.
Smile at your wife, smile at your husband, smile at your coworkers. Just start that. And she said, you have no idea the effect that can have. Remember and I won't name them, but the insurance company ads about a year or two back when one person would do a good deed and the next person would see it and they carry on. I love those ads.
I do too.
And I think maybe that's what she was getting at. Because if somebody smiles at me,
it's contagious.
Yes, thank you.
Even though you can't see it right now because we have on masks.
Right, right.
But Mike, this is something I want to talk about. I always have it's not a problem. I'm confused by when people are missionaries and, people will say, well, Taylor, you're in a missionary type work. You're in a ministry type work. There's so much ministry to be done in the tri-state. Oh my goodness. In Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati and Indiana, in our own little communities, we don't have to fly to some far off place. There is ministry in our own backyard.
Yep.
There was a young boy who messaged me recently about me praying for his father. His father didn't have a job and it was just a bunch of stuff. And he was talking about when his dad would get mad that he would beat him with a belt.
Oh.
And when Mike, if I could just let you have my social media password and read all of the private messages that I get every day, they're overwhelming. They really are overwhelming.
Not only in numbers, but in depth, probably.
In depth.
Okay.
And the things that people go through. And I'll think to myself, if people only knew the ministry they could do right here in their own community.
Yeah.
In their own backyard.
Their own homes.
Yeah. Right. So the answer, obviously, I think, is the breakdown of the American family.
Yes, ma'am.
I think the breakdown of the American family has made America, at least, it's like a domino effect. It's like it happened in this generation, and then it's happened in the next, and then it's happened in the next, and the next, and who's going to stop it? Who's going to be brave enough? I tell my kids this all the time. Which generation is going to be brave enough to stand up and say, this is what we need. We need God. We need a man. We need a woman.
Right.
That's just the way I feel.
I agree 100%. Absolutely 100%.
I think the trauma of divorce in my own life has been horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And what a gift, Mike, that you're giving your children and your grandchildren to not know divorce.
I never thought of that.
Oh, my goodness. What a legacy. Because I am definitely a child of trauma from divorce, and so are my children. And when is it going to stop? My ex was part of divorce.
Well, and not only having heard your story, but also knowing you inside, you did everything you could
Oh,
to
yeah.
fight for the integrity of that, and it wasn't your fault. And I think sometimes on your rougher days, you have trouble remembering that.
Yeah.
But I'm here to say to anybody who's listening that I know you did all you could,
Yeah.
humanly possible. So who's going to stop it? That's a good question. But I think we also have to remember it's not always us personally who wanted that.
Mm-hmm. But I really do think that it is the breakdown of the American family.
I agree 100%.
It's kids growing up in single homes. It's boys growing up without a father.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just without a father. It's without a godly father.
Right.
It's without a man that is a good example,
Mm-hmm.
a leader of the family.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think not only that, but you talk about stability a lot. And I think for kids to come to the conclusion that they can't count on something they should have been able to count on.
Yes.
There was a kid, and I won't name names or schools, but whose parents, and he was in second grade, and his parents got divorced, and all he could say for the first week at school, every time they asked him a question or said, "Are you okay today?" all he could say was, "My parents are getting a divorce. My parents are getting a divorce." And they said, "We understand that. We want to help you. What, you want to go out and play? My parents are getting a divorce. My parents are getting a divorce." If there's something they should have been able to count on, it was that. It's like trying to build a house with bad footers.
Well, the Bible even talks about building your foundation on sand or
rock.
Yes.
Yes, Jesus said, "The fool who built it on sand, it falls apart. The ones who build it on me, the rock, what more do you need?"
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's the breakdown. I think that's a lot of it.
And I always kind of get a little bit frustrated with my parents because they come from a home that was not broken. They had both their parents.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I get frustrated at times, and I have to remind myself they're doing the best that they could.
Yeah. There's a quote that I think speaks to what you said earlier about who's going to stop it. It's from Martin Luther King Jr., and he said, "All that's required for evil to continue is for good people to do nothing."
That's phenomenal. Yeah,
At some point, enough's enough.
right.
Do you ever get overwhelmed thinking, I'm in the camp that says enough's enough. I'm in the camp that's willing to stand strong, but I'm one person.
Oh, absolutely.
Even in your job, which reaches thousands, do you ever think, this is one corner of the world? How do I affect change?
Yeah, absolutely. This is not anything to make anybody feel guilt or shame, okay, Mike?
Right.
This is just total openness.
Right.
In my little corner of the world and
Right.
being on Christian radio,
Right.
only like 2% of the listening audience will fund a Christian radio station.
2%.
2%.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So of all the listeners, 2% of those will fund it, and the rest are just along for the ride. I had no idea it was that low.
Yes.
So what's that say to you?
So what I was going to say to that is, I know like so many people listen that love God and that want people to hear the music and the messages and to have light in the world. But during fundraising, sometimes it feels like I'm beating my head against the wall, trying to convince somebody to join the team of goodness,
Yeah.
to get on the team of God.
So, and this could be another podcast. I think it is actually. What are our priorities? I mean, what are folks' priorities if at some point the battle's the battle?
And I think it does get overwhelming for people that they're like, well, I'm in my community, I'm outnumbered. What can I do?
Former mayor of New York City, back when the crime there was so horrible they were losing tourism, they said, "What are you going to do about it?" And he said, "I'm going to start arresting the jaywalkers and the graffiti artists." And they said, "Okay, you don't understand. There's murders, robberies, arson, and you're going to arrest." He says, "Yeah." He goes, "It has to start somewhere. And if we start cleaning up from the bottom up," and you know what? It worked.
Really?
New York City tourism went from a all-time low to an all-time high within about 5 years.
Wow.
And he said, if we focus on the little crimes and then the word gets out that we're arresting for everything, I don't know. So maybe we start by just smiling and
the little
making
things.
sure our homes are a place of love.
Yeah. There's so many hurting people in the world and angry people in the world.
Yeah.
It's telling somebody about Jesus.
Yep. Letting him do his magic on their souls.
Yeah. But I mean, I agree with you. I do think it is the breakdown of the American family. I stand by that.
I do too. I think that has had horrific effects.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I always think about someone that gets married today, and when you stand up there in front of God and all your family and you're taking those vows, I mean, you're just caught up in the moment.
Right.
I wish I would have spent more time and money on my marriage before I got married than on my wedding.
You know, the priest at the church where I work has said that. He says to couples, are you putting more time into your marriage or your wedding day?
Right.
And half the time it's
the wedding.
Oh, we're wedding day.
I know.
You know, Beth is principal at a school, middle school. And
your wife?
Yep, my wife, my lovely wife. And she told me one time that she was making copies at the end of the last day before Christmas break. She was in late working, and it was after 5.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple students came up and said, do you need any help? And she said, it's 5 o'clock before Christmas break. Don't you want to go home? And they said no. And she said, why? And they said, well, it's 2 weeks with the crazies. We'd rather be here.
Oh, and you think about how the pandemic has affected children that we will never understand.
Yep.
That makes me sad.
Not seeing a full human face, a smile. You want to hear something positive?
Yes.
Helen Keller once said, and it might have been Anne Frank now I think about it, but one of them said, you know what? It's amazing that no one need wait a single moment to improve the world. And sometimes we think it has to be tomorrow or a big project or I have to get 80 friends.
Yeah.
It could be right now.
Right.
Smile on somebody. I almost said hug somebody, but with COVID, you gotta be careful.
You might get punched.
Yeah.
God says, I am the truth. I am the life. I'm the way. I don't know. I get so sometimes just overwhelmed with the way that the universe is molding itself into.
Yeah.
I get so overwhelmed by just all the craziness. Sometimes I log on to social media and I'm like, has the world lost its mind?
Mm-hmm.
What is happening?
Yeah. How many times
are we that far away from God?
Right. You and I have often started a phone conversation saying, I am so tired of the evil. You know what? There's a good quote for that. And I'm going to read it because I think it's something we need to remember. What needs most explanation is not why some people are criminals, but why most people are not. There's a lot of good still in this world.
Yeah, there is.
And we have to remember that.
Right.
And I have trouble on the tough days. I forget that easily. But on the good days, it's like, you know what? There is some good in this world.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we're all the key to the good. Maybe we're all the ones that need to spread the good.
Yes. Yes.
And I used to live next door to an elderly man, and his name is Don Robinette. And I would say he's probably 89 today. And he used to do things for me without me asking. And I would say, why are you doing that? Like mow my yard. Or one day he pressure washed my front porch when I wasn't home, or cleaned out my gutters, or changed a light bulb. And I would say, why do you do this stuff? And he was like, because when I was a kid and when I was growing up, these are the things you did for your neighbor.
Wow.
I mean, I would come home from work. This is when I was going through a divorce, and he was on a ladder changing light bulbs that were really high that I couldn't reach. And I remember going, Don, what are you doing? He was like, this is what neighbors do for one another. You don't have to ask me. I just see it, and I know it needs to be done.
So not only did he do it, but he noticed it.
Right. And would say, like, I notice it. I'm paying attention.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because he's watching out for his neighbor.
Yes.
Which is what Jesus said
I
to do.
miss that neighbor so much. You have no idea.
I bet.
He was so good to me.
That's awesome.
One time I was weed eating the yard, and there was a snake, and I screamed, and he came outside and he thought it was so funny. And I was just so, and he said, I'll finish weed eating for you. And I mean, he was in his 80s then.
Wow.
Probably 80, 81.
Wow.
We would go down to the creek. We had a creek behind the house. And we would go down to the creek and sit and talk for hours. And he would talk about life and how none of the other neighbors talked to him, and how if everybody on the street would just take care of one another. And he's so right.
Yeah, he is. We need about 1 million more like him.
Yes, 1 million more Don Robinettes for sure. He's a good neighbor.
That's a blessing that you had.
Yes. Considering I couldn't even tell you my neighbors' names. Isn't that awful?
You mean now?
Yeah.
Well, You are a busy lady. So we'll just say that you haven't had a chance to meet the neighbors.
You don't have to cover for me.
Well, you had a Don Robinette in your life. That's probably a lifetime's worth of neighbors.
Yes, absolutely. So, Mike, wrapping it up about making the world a better place, what advice would you give?
Hit your knees every morning. Tell Jesus that you want to live today according to his will and ask him to help you to love others. And don't script it. Don't count it.
Be the example.
Yeah.
Be the example of Jesus.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
I'm Taylor.
I'm Mike. Two friends and a question. Friends and a question. Friends and a question.